My friends, I want to introduce to you the Vanguard Agency. They are fit for Texas. They are in the business of helping people to save money. For all of insurance needs, the Vanguard Agency cannot wait to work with you. Get a quote for your home, get a quote for your auto, a quote for your business and restaurant. They are ready to shop your insurance policies with top-rated insurance companies. Go see my friend Humberto Garcia. He's been in the business a long time and makes an effort to make your insurance policy needs as seamless as possible for all of you. Tell him you heard about them here when you call him at 281-453-8770. They speak Spanish, and I know they will take care of you. Welcome back to the podcast Vibes by Alicia. I am so excited to have you all. We are really having a great day today. We have one of our sponsors on today, Vanguard Insurance. Humberto Garcia is here today, and he is going to talk to us about insurance because you know what? One thing I don't know anything about is insurance. And my husband Rusk is here today.
Hello.
And he's going to be leading the conversation today because I think it's important that we all also know some of the tips for insurance, some of the tips for knowing how to handle insurance claims, how to deal with different processes in insurance, whether it's car, homes, that kind of thing. We are really interested in educating you all and giving you all some information that you can take home and really apply it in your home. So for us, we are super, super excited to welcome Humberto Garcia. Welcome, Humberto.
Thank you for having me.
And Humberto's with Vanguard Agency, the Vanguard Agency. He's one of our sponsors. So if you haven't noticed yet, you will notice that on everything on our social media, everything on our descriptions for our podcast, you will see all of his contact information and you will definitely know how to reach him. So let's start and let's get excited. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We're so excited to have you. So Russ, mention a little bit of how you met Humberto.
So Humberto and I met at a workout studio in Houston, in the Heights. It's called Sweat. Back then it was called Sweat 1000, but they've rebranded themselves to Sweat 1K. And so we were taking the same studios, and we had a commonality. We were both business owners, and conversation started with that way. And Humberto has been in the insurance business for how many years now?
Since 2004, so
2004, right?
Wow.
So we thought it could be a great idea for Humberto to come on here to talk about some tips about insurance, about what to do in certain situations.
Yeah.
And maybe, get some knowledge out of it. I think a lot of the times I used to be in the body shop and the auto repair business, and I used to get clients call me all the time. Rusk, I got in an accident. My husband's out of town. What do I do? Should I wait for a police report? And I think Humberto's going to enlighten us on what to do. Also, we live in Houston. Yeah. Houston floods, as we all know. What do? Do we get flood insurance? Do we not get flood insurance? What's the best policies for homeowners? What's the best policies for cars? What's the market trends for the insurance business? And why go into somebody like Humberto, who is a broker, not necessarily working for a major insurance underwriter like a State Farm or an Allstate? Why go to him? What's the advantages of going to him?
Yeah, for sure.
And it's something that affects our lives all the time. It's something that at some point you're going to get a claim. You're going to get an accident. Your fault, not your fault. You're going to get a homeowner's claim. Your roof leaks one day. You may flood. You may have theft.
Right.
What to do? Because we all have the perception, looking from the outside in, that insurance is always kind of screwing you. And I personally don't think that's always the case. I think in my experiences of 20 years in the auto repair business, they always tend to do the right thing. Yeah. But every now and then, you get something that hits the papers. You get something that hits media, and the entire industry's painted with that same brush. And so I think having an agent on, like Humberto, and having a broker that not only is specific to a major carrier where you can get diversified quotes from the best quote. He's going to look for the quotes for you. And I think that's a great ad because this is something that makes a decision. If you get a house, you get an apartment, what kind of, do you get $1,000 deductible or $500 deductible? Do you get a full coverage policy?
Right. Yeah.
So have at it, Humberto.
No, and I think it's important that we share with our listeners the things that we've learned along the way. I think one of the things for the podcast has always been a mission or a goal of mine to educate my listeners, to inform them of the things that are out there, and to have them be prepared for whatever's coming. So for sure, the first thing I want to know, Humberto, for you is like, how did you get into the insurance business? And how did you get started?
Yeah, it was back in 2004.
Okay.
And I had my resume on monster.com at the time. And I got a call from a farmer's district manager.
Okay.
They called me for an interview, and I wanted to do insurance. I knew people that did it, and you know what, I wanted to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I got into it. They made me a farmer's agent pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And what made me fall in love with the business was that many people don't know what they have. Many people don't understand insurance.
Right.
You're right.
They just see a price and they go off of that. And whatever they don't know could cost them a lot of money if they pick the wrong coverages or the wrong, especially for home insurance,
right?
The wrong coverages. So I became more of an educational to customers where I don't sell to them, but I more educate them. I let them decide what they pick after we do the education part to them. So I became more of a educate the community versus sell to the community.
Because it can get pretty convoluted, right? Understanding, you know, if your net worth is, let's say, 6 figures, and you don't want to undercover yourself, right? You don't want to have the policy where, in case of something catastrophic that happens to you. And I think a lot of people don't understand that because there's way too many options out there when picking insurance. And I think that's one advantage of having somebody like yourself. And I think what also should separate you from other agents is, like you said, educate those particular clients. So, you know, for example, you have a brokerage, right? And what's your advantage as being a broker over somebody, let's say, that you go into Allstate or State Farm or to Geico online? Right. Because, you know, they make it really easy. You can go to Geico, you can go to, you know, what's the other one that starts with the letter P?
Progressive,
right? Yeah. You go there and you type in some information, then they harass you, you know, for the next 2 or 3 weeks. I get those emails all. Yeah, they do. They harass you. Like, they do. Once they get on that algorithm and they start sending you emails, all that kind of stuff. So what's the advantage of going to somebody like yourself?
So the advantage of going to us is that we offer many carriers.
Right.
So we do the shopping for you. Now, my office is really selective who we work with as far as the carriers. So they have to have a certain financial rating for us to work with them.
Okay.
That way they pay out claims in case it's a, you know, Cat 5 hurricane or something.
Okay.
So there's a lot of carriers that I choose not to work with because they don't have the financial strength to pay a major loss.
Mm-hmm.
So working with someone like us.
So you do the research for your clients.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So if I want to offer certain carriers because we don't want to work with that.
You don't want to work with that carrier because they're tight. They're, excuse my lack of a better term, tightwads, right? They don't want to pay out for a particular claim. You've had some experience with them before. So you're shopping around for your clients to find something that is going to be satisfactory to them in the time of a claim.
In the case of a loss, yeah.
In the case of a loss, thank you.
If you have a Cat 5 hurricane, almost every house is going to be damaged.
Yeah.
And some of the ones that don't have financial strength, they're probably don't have enough money to pay out all the claims. So I want to make sure that they all have a certain rating. And they're called rated A. So those are the ones I pick. And then I only pick certain form types for home insurance. You got an HOA, HOB, HO3.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What do those mean? Explain that to our listeners.
Okay. So the HOA is the most basic form of homeowners.
Okay.
I do not recommend anybody having that. They only cover 7 things. It's a very cheap policy. It's really hard to know what you have. It's going to be a small fine print.
Okay.
So like in our office, all we offer is the HO3s. And that's a more broad, it covers all risk. It doesn't exclude anything unless it's listed as exclusion. So that's one of the main things. If you're our homeowner, make sure you look at your declaration page and make sure you have an HO3 policy versus
HO3 policy. What does HOA and HO3 stand for? Tough question. All right. So what if you have a client that comes in and says, you know what, I got a lot of money. I just want some kind of catastrophic situation. Is that an HOA? It's like, I just want to cover something where I just don't want total loss. I can handle a high deductible. I can handle the minor issues. I don't want a $500 deductible on my house. I don't want $1,000 on my car. I can do a $2,000 deductible. I can fix the what I used to call country club whiskey dents. Right. So, but I just don't want something my entire house burns down. So I would rather forego a less premium up front, a smaller premium up front, right, but a higher deductible at the same time.
So I'll give you an example of an HOA. An HOA policy could be an actual cash value policy. So let's just say you have $100,000 worth of stuff inside your house, and you have a claim 10 years later. So the insurance company is going to decide how much they're going to pay you out on stuff inside your house, right, based on how much you bought it for minus the age of the items you have. In some cases, it could be 20%. So you pay $100,000 for stuff inside. Instead of giving you $100,000, they're going to give you $20,000.
Right.
Minus the deductible.
Right.
So that's why I never recommend HOAs. Okay. The HO3 is already included for the dwelling.
Right.
But for the coverage C, property, everything inside, you have to add it as an endorsement.
Okay. So I think what you're alluding to is a cash value versus replacement value.
Yes.
And so explain to the listeners, why is it important, and in what situations is it okay to have a cash value? Because there's obviously folks that are insured that have just cash value, and some folks that want replacement value. Explain to the listeners, when should you have replacement value? When is it okay to have a cash value on a particular property, whatever you're insuring? And what happens if you misunderstand that you have a cash value and you have replacement value, that you didn't say, man, I didn't realize I had a cash value. My agent at that particular time didn't explain the cash value. They just told me I can get you a better deal, but I was kind of suckered into a cash value deal. And here I am, the claim happens, and I'm only getting 20%.
Right. So I would never recommend a cash value unless you have a very old house, and it's really poor conditions. Then it may not qualify for a replacement cost policy, because they are going to do an inspection on the house, and within 60 days of we issue the policy, and the insurance company wants to make sure the house is in good standing.
Okay.
So only if the house doesn't qualify, then we recommend. The only option left is an actual
cash value only on an older home. What's an older home? Define an older home. 20 years older, 40 years?
Maybe like 40 plus
years old.
Oh,
right?
okay.
Right.
Wow.
Because 40-year-old older home is
without updates.
Without updates.
So let's say they change the plumbing and the wiring and the roof, then it will qualify for it.
It will qualify for. So sometimes you don't have an option, is what you're saying. Sometimes if you have an older home without updates, you automatically fall into the cash value program, right?
It could. We're going to do an inspection,
right,
and they find something that the wiring is not up to code, or the plumbing is not up to code. It's gonna come back.
Okay, so there's going to be a segment of the market that's automatically a cash value. But what if you're in a 10-year-old home and you want just a cheaper premium? What happens? Like, explain a little bit more in detail. You were alluding to it at the beginning about a 20% situation. You get broken into, and you have a personal articles policy of $100,000. Personal articles covers what?
Fine art, guns, jewelry. So personal articles is more of an endorsement that was not covered.
Okay.
So there's certain things that insurance does not cover, no matter what carrier you pick or what policy type you pick, and that is flood,
right,
and guns, jewelry, fine art, collectibles.
Okay.
So that is not covered at all.
Okay. That's not covered in the original homeowner's policy,
yes,
right?
Correct.
That's additional.
That's additional.
So that's additional. Say it again. Flood,
guns,
right,
fine arts,
jewelry,
collectibles,
right. So that is a separate policy in itself. You have to request that policy when you get a homeowner's deal, right?
Yes, it's part of like the new business process. Whenever we talk to a new client, we ask them these questions to see what you have.
Right.
And in my case, most of the cases, nobody's ever asked them the questions. Okay. They didn't even know that was covered. They think it was covered.
Okay.
And yes, and I think a lot of people don't understand that. They think that everything that's covered in a house, that's inside the house is covered.
But
and
that's not necessarily the case.
That's not the case.
Wow.
So the homeowners strictly covers the structure, wind and hail damage to a roof, right?
Yeah, fire, theft, vandalism.
Fire. So that's where it gets confusing, right? Because if you have theft, so somebody breaks into your house and steals something, but then jewelry and fine art, which is what
they're going to steal.
Collectibles, that's not covered.
It's not covered.
So it's kind of like almost counterintuitive, right?
So you have to work with an agent that can really take you through the whole process and really get to know your household, because every household is different.
Right. Everybody has a different lifestyle.
Everybody has, some guys like to collect watches, and they think that watches cover in their home insurance.
And it's not. Yeah.
Right.
Some people like to collect fine art for investment purposes.
Right.
For sure.
And it's not covered. Some people just have collect guns.
So that's a great point, Humberto. So just so when everyone's listening, when you get a homeowner's policy, make sure you get a separate policy, not a separate policy. In that policy,
an
endorsement for your personal articles, right? So in terms of personal articles, if you have a replacement value, right, and you have a $10,000 watch is stolen or a $40,000 painting that's stolen, what should the homeowner do to make sure that they can recover 100% of that in a replacement value?
When you have something collectible like that, just make sure you always keep the receipt, proof of purchase.
Right.
Okay.
That's something they're going to ask for. If you've been with the insurance company for a long time, 10 years, they ask for a lot less, but especially when you're brand new to an insurance carrier and you have a claim in a month later, that's kind of like a...
Okay, so that leads me to a little side point, which I've always wondered. So if you're 10 years versus 1 year, why is that? Why do they... I have an idea, but I want to hear from you.
It's just a requirement that they have. Anybody that has an insurance policy for 1 year or less, they do have to do a little bit more investigation.
So they think there's maybe some fraud or whatever, right?
So there's investigation.
So is it possible that a 10-year client, maybe that the insurance looks at how much premium has been paid versus what they have to dish out, or they don't look at that?
No, look at that. It just depends on the situation. Like if they go into the house and the house looks like there's not expensive items in there. Or you're saying there is, that could do it.
Okay. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because we didn't know that.
I have seen several denied claims in my career.
Denied claims, yeah.
And they were denied why?
It was fraud.
Fraud.
Yeah, it was fraud. Yeah.
They simply, hurricanes coming and get a policy real quick, right?
Well, we had one incident that they had TVs. This is like 10 years ago.
Right.
Where TVs were a lot more expensive than they are now. And there was nothing inside the house at all. Like it was supposedly just TVs. And they got broken into, and 5 TVs got stolen from the wall.
Oh, wow.
But when the insurance company went in there, well, there's no furniture here. There's nothing in there.
That's interesting.
So that was like a kind of red flag. Like, okay,
So what if you don't have, let's say you bought a piece of art from 20 years ago and you lost the receipt, but it was $40,000 painting. What happens if you don't have the receipt?
Get an appraisal. These fine arts go up in value quite a bit.
Okay.
So I was going to.
So does the carrier, the underwriter, how do they go about appraising, a watch or they just
a painting?
Painting.
They go off of what you provide to them.
Okay.
So
if you don't have anything to provide, you said this is a painting I had bought from this artist in New Orleans.
Yeah, it's on the wall. Like the paintings we bought in New Orleans
Right.
that were like very pricey.
Right.
Yeah. Just keep your receipt.
Keep your receipts
and get an appraisal.
But not everyone keeps their receipts. Some people lose stuff, right? Some people not everyone's always organized.
What's the other option?
What's the option?
If you don't have a receipt, then when I advise customers is to take some time to do an appraisal, upload it to a cloud or somewhere, that way you always have it.
Okay. So get a professional appraisal.
Yes.
Come and appraise your artwork. So in plan C, maybe reach out to the studio,
the gallery
that you bought it, and see if they could get something formally written for you, right? Yes. Or maybe find something online based on the artist and see what things you can do that too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's talk about car accidents.
Right.
I think car accidents is something that's like really, really popular right now in everything. Like, I think I see a car accident happen
every day,
all the time,
every day,
like a few times a day. So, Humberto, tell us a little bit about what is the best thing to do, like if there is a dispute with like the insurance.
So if you ever get into a car wreck, I always recommend getting a police report. Always, even if the parties agreed it was my fault or whatever. But I've seen so many cases where,
I mean, people leave the scene, so you recommend don't leave the scene. Stay until the police is there and get a report.
It's only like 50% of the time people change their stories. It's really, really.
Because they go home, they talk to friends, they talk to family, they get manipulated, right? So police report is the third party, unbiased.
Yes.
It's your backup.
So always make sure you get police report.
Right.
And you can call your current insurance, call the other party's insurance, and just file a claim, start the process. Right now, the claims are taking a little bit longer than before.
Why is that?
Shortage of parts. Okay. Shortage of workers, shortage of car rentals too. So, so the claims you may see car rates right now going up a little bit,
right?
But because the cost of cars kind of went up, so now the claims are bigger, and the cost of parts.
And it's all like a supply demand thing.
Supply demand thing. So the cost of the repair you're saying is higher.
The cost of repair is higher, and if your car is totaled, they are paying more.
They're paying more for it. Yes. But in terms of the claim processing time, that's what I thought that you were alluding to. It's taking longer. So before there's a shortage of adjusters or
shortage of parts. So it takes parts. It takes them longer to get a part now.
On the repair side. On the repair side. But in terms of doing the inspection by the field inspector,
that's pretty fast.
That's fast.
Y'all, nothing beats a healthier ride than a 45-minute spin class at CycleBar West U. Y'all know I've been on a journey of health and wellness. My doctor recommended that I do cardio to improve my blood pressure. It's been high and I have hypertension, and nothing has worked better than the CycleBar West U class. I'm telling you, CycleBar has the smart bikes. They will calculate your distance and your calories. The music's great. The vibe is great. The lighting is amazing, and the trainers really want to make you have that amazing experience. I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but if you wanted to, you can ask for your favorite workout songs. They want this to be about you. They want you to have the best experience possible. And by the way, I am letting you know now that they have a new Rider 3-pack for only $49. Amazing. You find them at 3233 Southwest Freeway. Or you can also reach out to them at 713-677-0477. And their email is westu@cyclebar.com. Ask for Guillermo. He's going to take care of you. If you don't do anything else for the rest of the day and you do the CycleBar West U class, I'm telling you, you're going to walk out and you're going to feel like a badass. Friends, I must tell you, I know the place to go if you need house audio, TV installation, security monitoring. I am telling you, these people are so, so good that I cannot wait to share them with you. AVS Concepts is the place to get all of these things taken care of. They're the experts in audio video. If you are entertaining and you need music, call them. If you just purchased a new house and you want to have security, you've got to call them. They are the best at all of this for you. I am so excited to share them with you. They are new sponsors for the podcast. You will not regret having them in your house. They can put anything up and create the most amazing surround sound. I am telling you, when I watch my movies, I like to watch them with surround sound. And thanks to AVS Concepts, I can do that. Follow them at their Instagram account, AVSC_HTX, or you can also find them at their website, avcschouston.com, and tell them that Alicia from Buy and Smile Alicia sent you, and they will take care of you. I promise you.
So always stay at the accident scene. Always get a police report. It helps your case, right?
Yes.
So what happens, Humberto, if you get in this is something I think that a lot of the times, and even in my case, there's a dispute. And your insurance is going to say, we're going to go after the other insurance's party.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And because we're going to pay your claim because you had full coverage on a vehicle, but we're going after you. But you're always worried about that your premiums go up, and you know that you're not at fault.
Right.
You know, somebody T-boned you, and you were going a green light, they went on a red light, and then all of a sudden your premium goes up in 6 months.
Right.
And then you call back and you say, well, that wasn't my accident, it wasn't my fault. We never get to see what the result is of a dispute between two insurance carriers. Looking from the outside in, it's you know, what how do people how do the insured how does the insured how does the populate how do people know that my insurance won the case?
Right. It could take up to 2 years. So that's why you probably don't see it. But that's it could take up to 2 years.
2 years
Because they could just go back and forth, fight, but they gotta it has to be resolved in 2 years.
So state law in Texas says 2 years, 2 years is the statutory limit to get it resolved.
Yeah.
So you might be paying for an increase in premium because it has not been resolved, or
it could be that, and you pay a deductible whenever that happens. And I've seen many cases where they get a deductible back after they settled.
Okay.
They just kind of just fight for a little bit with each other, and then it's getting close to 2 years.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you're right. It's my fault.
Right. So deductible gets paid back to the premium or
to the customer.
To the customer.
Yeah, you should get a check in the mail for.
Right. So when do you? I get this question all the time. When is it good to get full coverage on a vehicle, and when is it good to just get liability?
Just on the value of your vehicle. Like if your vehicle is worth, $10,000 or more, I'd always recommend getting full coverage.
$10,000 or more.
Mm-hmm. If it's under $10,000, then you have to, once you calculate deductible.
What kind of car? I mean, I guess a used car.
Well, Alex, our son's
$10,000. I guess it's used cars.
I don't have full coverage on his.
That you purchased cash on, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's just the cost of the insurance is high plus the deductible.
Well, because if you get in a wreck and the car is worth $7,000 and it's $4,000 worth of damage, then it's almost total, right?
Total.
So what's the magic number for a total vehicle? What is a field inspector? What does the insurance look at?
It varies. So right now, since the cost of cars are a little bit higher, so you don't see as many total wrecks anymore.
Right.
So
they're finding ways to repair things.
Yes.
This is recent. This is post COVID, post-pandemic, inflationary, byproduct, right? Okay.
It's a little bit different. So the
cars really fixing them. They're not doing like
if the car has major damage, they're gonna total it.
Yeah.
It's just that it will. Before it used to be a little bit different. If it got flooded, it has to be flooded a certain line. And blah blah. So it varies based on the year.
Right. So so insurance these days are looking to find ways to fix a vehicle more than they were pre-pandemic.
Correct. Correct.
So I think that makes a lot of people happy.
Yeah.
I think it does because a lot of people, when I used to be in the body shop business, it was a 75% threshold. So if your vehicle, the cost of the repair of the vehicle exceeded 75% of the appraised value of the vehicle, then they just total the vehicle.
Right.
But now I think what you're saying, and people used to complain to me, is like, well, yeah, what am I going to do now? I'm only going to get like $12,000 for this car. The car was $60,000 when I bought it. It's like 7 years old, and I can't go back and get another $60,000. I got to start another car payment, stuff like that.
Right.
So I think this is actually beneficial. Yes. I think when you are you're getting an estimate to repair the vehicle, and you're getting back on the road, you don't have to total the vehicle because they're going to give you a check, and you can't really do much with that check.
Right.
And just you're back in debt again, right? So I think that's a good deal. Okay, so just a little bit back to explaining, I think, the cash value versus replacement value, and also what to do when you have a claim on a residential property. So just to break it down in a few sections, you have hail or wind damage on a roof, or and then you have flood damage, or you have theft. And then kind of tie that in a little bit to the replacement and cash value. I know it's a little bit, it's kind of a little bit of a complicated question, but you get roof damage, and you get these roof guys. They call you all the time, and the roof guys say, "I can fix your roof. Call your insurance and stuff like that." And sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't. But then you have a roof leak, and then you call. Give people the process. Give our listeners the process of what they should do from A to Z. To make sure that they're getting the best kind of advice in terms of a claim, because a lot of people make a mistake. Like, for example, I've always had an inspector there for all the properties that we've done. And then one property, I said, I'm just going to roll the die. I'm going to call him out there, file a claim. And the inspector wasn't there, and my claim was denied. He found a few shingles for $300. My deductible was obviously greater than $300. That's never happened before. So I think I think if the inspector was there, and I had this conversation outside of this, always have the inspector there.
You always want to have, like, call your contractors, call at least 3 contractors, get 3 different quotes.
I'm sorry, not the inspector, the contractor.
Yeah.
Thank you for correcting me.
Yeah, get 3 contractors to look at your roof, look at the damage, and pick one that you feel comfortable with, you have a good price, and that has experience talking to insurance companies. And then whenever the adjuster from the insurance company comes to see the house, make sure the adjuster is there at the same time. I mean, the contractor's there at the same time, because they're going to point out other damages that the insurance adjuster may not see.
Okay.
And that's how you always want to make sure you have them at the same time.
Okay.
Don't do it where they're separately, just at the same time. That's always works out to be the best for.
So you don't necessarily have to have a contractor there, but you should probably have some quotes there.
You have some quotes there, but I will still advise.
Because you can't have 3 contractors that are obviously at the same time.
Right.
You should at least have one contractor and maybe 3 estimates. So one contractor, multiple estimates. Have the contractor there at the time of the inspection. Reach out to the contractor, and then make sure that they coordinate with the field inspector, right?
Correct.
Right.
So always have a contractor with you whenever the field inspector comes.
So what happens if you don't have flood insurance in Houston and your house floods?
In Houston, there's no such thing as no flood zone anymore. In Houston, it's either going to be a low risk or high risk.
Okay.
So everything is flooded. It can be flooded.
Anything can be flooded.
So is this new? Or is this post?
We're getting more and more floods.
Is it post Harvey? No,
I'm sorry, post Harvey.
There's several reasons. Yeah, one of them.
Too many in Houston. It all becomes a blur, right? Post Harvey.
We're growing. Houston's growing a lot,
right?
And there's a lot of new houses. All the new houses are elevated,
right?
So the elevations are changing. Places that didn't flood before now do flood. There's so many places that flood that didn't flood before.
So it's just based on high risk, low risk. But as a homeowner, what should I do? Should I still get flood insurance?
Yes, I think everybody should get flood insurance.
No matter where you are, low risk.
Low risk, get it insurance. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you don't have flood insurance and your house floods, you're screwed.
You're screwed on zero coverage.
No coverage.
And even low risk is going to cost you like $600 a year. It's not like very expensive.
That was going to be my next question. What percentage of a premium typically is flood insurance, percentage-wise?
Very
less than 10?
Yeah, less than 10.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because the damages could be $30,000, $40,000, right? So they'll cover if your house came with carpet, but you decided to upgrade it to tile. Or you put some fancy tile like we did, like porcelain tiles, like $12 a foot, ridiculous.
Right. Yeah.
And will the insurance cover $12 a square foot tile?
Yeah, they're going to replace whatever.
They're going to replace whatever it is.
As long as you have the replacement cost for flood, also it applies to flood as well.
So you have to have replacement cost and a flood insurance, and they will replace not what your property came with, but what you currently have.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Wow. Oh wow.
So in houses that are worth like over, $300,000, $400,000 grand, you can get a policy for flood, $250,000 for dwelling, $100,000 for the contents. That will make it replacement cost. Those are the highest limits for the preferred rate.
So replacement cost is 100% minus your deductible.
Correct.
And replacement cost is determined by the going rate of particular like cabinets, the tile, the sheetrock, the paint. Or do you have to provide receipts for all that?
No. Let's say you buy a TV that's worth $1,000 and it's 3 years old. So they're going to give you, that TV is probably no longer, selling anymore. So they're going to give you the closest thing to that TV, current market.
Right. Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So flood insurance, minimal cost, definitely worth it. You said that there's no longer any defined flood zones of what's a flood zone and not a flood zone.
It's either low risk,
high risk rows.
Yeah.
All developers are now going forward in the city of Houston or in Harris County in general.
All of Houston, everything's getting
outside
elevated.
Of Houston too.
Everything's getting elevated.
So everything's getting elevated. They're now forcing developers to bump up your house an extra 2 feet or 3 feet. Right.
There's a lot of areas that couldn't build, but now they bypass that by just building higher.
Building higher. And so homeowners are absorbing the cost of going a little bit higher, but the flip side of that is that you probably have a less risk of flooding.
Right.
And just because you didn't flood in one year doesn't mean you're not going to flood in the next year.
Right.
We didn't flood in Harvey, but we only got 36 inches of rain, but some areas got 50 plus inches of rain. If we got 50 plus inches, we could have definitely flooded. Right.
If we have like the Hurricane 5 and it hits on the right spot in Houston, many houses are going to be flooded.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
well, that's really good to know because I think a lot of listeners don't understand that everything is flood prone. Everything.
Everything's flood prone. Yeah. Well, we live on a swamp.
We don't have any. Yeah, we do. We definitely
this used to be a swamp 200-300 years ago.
Yeah.
So the water has really nowhere to go. Right.
And every house would probably have a claim, like if we get a Cat 5.
Right. Cat 5.
Yeah. Every house is going to have some kind of damage.
And with climate change and all of that, I think it's just so much more likely that it's going to happen, and it's going to be something that's a clear possibility for so many homeowners in the city.
So when you have basic homeowners insurance, no personal articles endorsement, no flood insurance, but you get a hurricane and it damages your property, that's covered.
Correct. That's covering the coverage A.
So when you file, most of the time hurricanes are wind, right? It's not really the rain. They don't really bring a lot of rain. I know Harvey brought a lot of rain, but that's kind of exception to the rule. Right. It's mostly wind. So wind does a lot of damage, typically to windows and to your roof.
Right.
And so when you file a claim, they always ask you, is it wind or hail damage? I always think that's a trick question in a big storm because I don't really know if there was a lot of wind. I don't know really if there was a lot of hail. I think I saw hail. I think I saw a lot of wind. What do you say? Both?
Storm damage.
Storm damage.
Storm damage, yeah.
That's the key word, right. Storm damage.
Yeah, storm damage.
Wow.
Just say it was storm damage.
Storm damage.
But so if I say wind and they say, well, you didn't have wind, you had hail damage, can they deny the claim?
No.
Oh, okay. No, so why are they asking that question?
Just to get details to fill out the form, but it's
so they're not categorizing. Well, you said it was wind, but we found hail damage and not wind damage. So therefore, we're denying your claim. I was like, well, do I just refile the claim as hail damage?
Because what homeowner really knows?
Right, exactly. That's my point.
Is, unless you're a meteorologist.
Right, meteorologist, or you're not even expert. If you look at the tiles, you look at the shingles, and you realize, is that wind or hail? It looked like hail ripped it off. I mean, hail punctured it.
Yeah, and that's putting the homeowner in a predicament that they don't understand what affected their house.
Like you have an HOA policy. Some of what's not covered in HOA policy is wind-driven rain.
Right.
And if there's a hurricane here, you are going to have wind-driven rain damage.
Wind-driven rain.
Rain.
Wind-driven rain. Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
Yeah.
Wind-driven rain. Yes. Right.
So that's interesting. You can get water damage inside your house. So that's why you always, recommend the HO3. And
so next time you have a policy, next time you have a claim and you have a situation with your home and it's leaking, just say storm damage. Sorry.
Storm damage. Yeah, that's fine.
Storm damage, right. Wow, that's interesting.
I've learned a lot.
Yes, this is amazing.
This is like really good.
Get a police report. Get a personal articles endorsement, right? Also, get flood insurance.
So the biggest the personal articles endorsement is wedding rings.
Wedding rings.
Yeah, so that's like the main thing where you insure wedding rings.
Right.
Those wedding rings can be 5, 10, 20 grand, depending.
Depends how sexy the wife is.
Well, let's talk about that real quick.
Let's go back 20
Mr.
years.
Latasi, you got off very easy.
Smart guy.
You need to go back.
Yeah.
So we have a personal articles policy because it kind of covers theft, but it doesn't really cover theft if you want something specific covered, right?
Right.
What you're alluding to is you cover theft by damage to the door, damage to the windows, maybe some damage to the walls. If the guy decides to throw shit around, damage to your couches. But if you're saying something, hey, he stole my engagement ring of $20,000, or I'm paying $100,000, got to have a separate policy for that.
Right.
Flood insurance. Humberto says flood insurance is inexpensive. It's worth it. Never know when the next Harvey's coming. Just because you didn't get hit doesn't mean you're not going to get the time, right?
The flood rates are changing a lot recently.
Humberto, if we want to find where you're coming from, where they can find you, where can my listeners find where you are?
They can go to my website, Vanguard Agency, LLC.com. Call my office, 281-453-8770.
Say it one more time.
281-453-8770.
And how many agents do you have working with you?
We have 11 agents.
11 agents.
Amazing.
Wow.
Agents.
That's amazing.
And we've been around for 4.5 years. So we
so
open.
they can't find one person; they'll find another person.
They'll find another
There's
person.
no way they cannot
Right.
find Humberto Garcia or somebody at Vanguard.
And you have
Agency.
agents that specialize in homes, in homeowners insurance, right?
Yeah, our agents are all trained to educate you first. You know, that's like the first
Perfect.
thing. So we don't sell. We educate you. We let you decide
Right.
what options you are comfortable with.
Yes.
You know, maybe having you're okay taking a risk, not insuring your rain ring. It's okay, but at least now you know it's not covered.
Right.
Versus not knowing at all, or you're in the
I
impression
love that
it's
because
covered.
you know
Right.
a lot of listeners don't know that those things are covered, what's covered,
Right.
what's not covered, and I think that the fact that you say we can educate you on what it is that we're doing before we sell any policy to you, I think that's important. I think that's a big difference.
I think it's huge because it's
huge.
Right.
Yeah.
I think people take it for granted until
Yes.
something happens one day,
And then they don't realize.
and they don't realize it. It's
Yeah.
like, man, I wish we would have done things different. I think what Humberto explained is what I want to reemphasize one more time: is you get a flood insurance policy, not expensive. Get a personal articles policy. Always wait for a police report. Right. There's no really difference between a hail and wind damage. It's just really a storm damage, right? It's
and have the contractors there.
Have the contractors there.
Have
Yes.
or just
Three
one.
quotes.
Have 2 or 3 estimates. Save your
have
receipts.
ones,
Common sense stuff.
Yeah.
Put them away in a safe box. Put them away in a security box at the bank, because you never know. I said we always think that it's not going to happen to us until it happens to
You
us.
know
Yeah,
what?
no.
That is so true. But let me just go through one more thing because
Right.
this is the thing that always gets me. We have kids that are teenagers, and should teenagers have insurance? Because we have a teenager, he's 19, and we were like, oh, I don't know, like he's expensive. It's a teenager boy.
Right.
What do you recommend in terms of that? Because it's been like a point of contention for Rusk and myself.
So when you have a teenager driver, I highly recommend, to have insurance and you up your liability limits, because any person the age of 16 to 25, they're a really high risk of being in car wrecks.
Yeah.
Right.
And the more assets you have, let's say he's at fault, the more assets that you'll have, then they're more likely that there could be a lawsuit
Pursue those.
to go after those assets.
Right. And so what happens if, how does the insurance discover, for example, if you have a $300,000 cap on your policy, and then insurance somehow, not the insurance, the claimant, is that, am I saying that right? The claimant's policy is real. Somehow they figure out you're probably worth more than $300,000.
They hire an attorney and they do a discovery, and if they find out you have any kind of assets, they're gonna. I've seen it many times.
Okay, so does the insurance go? So I go to you, and you find me an insurance carrier. An insurance carrier stops at $300,000. What does your insurance carrier do to make sure it stops at $300,000 and doesn't go after more?
So the insurance carrier is going to review the claim, and depending on how big the claim is or how bad the damage is, let's say it's a minor thing. Right. They do a lawsuit. It's all negotiation between the lawyer and the insurance carrier, but the lawyer may say, "Give me $100,000," and they'll set up $20,000. Right. But something major, like a debt or something, then you're talking millions at that point. Right. And if you're
talking millions at that point,
you're talking millions at that point.
But millions the claimant has to justify that they're worth millions.
Correct.
Because they have to say, hey, I was making 9 figures before, you killed me. If you're making $40,000 a year, you're not entitled to $20 million, right? So you got to say, so what's the formula? Because I think a lot of people looking from the outside in, should I get $300,000? Should I get $500,000, $700,000? And then realize that, but if somebody hits me and they're making $60,000, you're not entitled to $500,000 or whatever.
So what I recommend is that, the more you have, the more you can lose, right? So if you have some rental homes and you have some assets that you want to protect them.
Yes.
So you want to have the higher limits just in case that happens. It's not that much money extra per month, maybe like $20 a month.
Oh,
sure.
wow.
That's it.
Okay.
That's it. But I will also add an umbrella to it.
Umbrella policy.
Yeah,
that was going to
policy.
be my next question.
And I will have like an extra additional $1 million of liability protection in case of losses. You're really protecting
everything.
People from taking your stuff.
From coming after you, right?
Because that's the umbrella. That's the metaphorical. It's like an umbrella. It protects absolutely everything in your assets, right? So what does an umbrella policy cost for $1 million
300 a year.
300 a year.
400 a year, maybe.
For $1 million.
$1 million.
So $200, $2,600,000 a year,
right.
something like that.
Right.
Give or take.
Yeah, it's very, very inexpensive.
But you know what? That makes sense that he's saying this to us, because there's a lot of families and there's a lot of women in this listener audience that are moms to teenagers, and we always worry our kids are driving out there. A lot of them are texting. They're with their buddies. They're with their friends.
Right. They're adolescents.
They're adolescents.
They're impulsive.
They're going fast. I mean, as much as you try to give your kids like
Life?
No, like a life. Yeah, right. A life, a liberty, freedom. There's still a lot of liability that's going on, especially when they're out with their buddies, they're out with their friends. And literally yesterday, I was watching the news when I was in my mom's hospital. The kids, there were 3 teenagers that went through an embankment, and they fell into like a river.
Right.
And they were 16, 17, 18, 19 permits. They had driver's permits. And that's just in my head as a mom of a teenager. She's 19, and soon to have a 15-year-old who's going to be driving too. It really gives me a lot of like, okay, what am I going to do to protect my kids and protect who we are as a family?
It's tough out there, and that's, I think, what...
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think it's an important part to mention for a lot of these, you know, these families and moms like myself.
I'll give you a scenario that happened to an agent, a friend of mine. He had a doctor, had a lot of properties. He had a son that was like 22 years old. The son just graduated college, and he was partying the night before. And he wasn't into drugs or drinking, but that day he did have smoke, right? Just celebrating with the friends.
Well, but not smoking a cigarette. He was smoking something.
Weed.
Okay.
He was smoking weed.
Smoking weed's not. Smoking cigarettes not illegal, right?
Correct. He was smoking weed, and the next day he was driving downtown Houston, and a homeless person just ran into him, and the person died, but it wasn't his fault. So there was a cop behind him.
So a homeless person in a vehicle.
Right? No, he was walking.
Oh, he ran over the homeless person.
Yeah, he ran over the homeless, but it was a homeless person's fault in this case. Cop was behind, saw the whole thing, and said, "Don't worry about it. I saw it.
I saw it. Yeah.
I know it wasn't your fault, but because there was a debt involved, they had to do a drug test on him, and he failed. And now it becomes a different type of lawsuit. They didn't have an umbrella policy, so it ended up costing the lawyer a lot of money to settle the lawsuit.
So it cost their lawyer a lot of money.
Yeah, the insurance company
to defend the kid.
The insurance company is going to pay the limit of the policy. $100,000. That's it. They're going to pay $100,000. After that, then the insurance companies,
who's pursuing that lawsuit, though? If the homeless person isn't pursuing it,
I want to ask that question.
Who's pursuing it? Is it the city of Houston?
He had a family. The person had a family.
Okay. See, that's another situation, of course.
Right. So stuff like that could happen, and you don't know. To me, having an umbrella policy for $300, $400 a year, just peace of mind.
Makes sense, of course.
Right. And just sleep better.
Sleep better. I think that's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
I think that's great advice, because if you're a high net worth individual, I think it's definitely worth it.
It makes sense. Absolutely. Right. Humberto, thank you so much for all your tips.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here today and sharing all of these amazing. You know what? I think we learned a lot today.
I like the policy. I like the part about the umbrella policy.
I do too. Right? And in a quick recap, I feel like we got some really good details and tips on how we can pursue insurance and not be afraid of it, but really use it as a way to protect ourselves. Right? I think a lot of people have a sense of like, oh, insurance, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to have it. But honestly, I think where you're coming from is like, protect yourself. It's good to be on the proactive side, basic, right? I love that. I think that's important.
It's fantastic because
you
never know when you're going to need it. You go 10 years without having a claim. But that, just really quick, I just want to ask one more question. Why is insurance always going up and it never goes down? Because you don't have a claim for 10 years, not a homeowner's claim, not a car insurance claim, and all of a sudden it goes up. I know inflation, I know cost of standards, but it always upsets me. You have one claim after 10 years, and then your premium went for $100 a month to $125. And you look back and you do the math and you call the insurance carrier and say, listen, you've collected $20,000 from me over 10 years, and you've spent $4,000 on me on my last accident. I said, you got to really increase I'm obviously a low risk individual. Is it based on the carrier, or is that kind of industry wide risk analysis kind of where they're going to go after you once you get in an accident?
So it's based more on their claims reserves, where they were having reserves for claims.
Okay.
So let's say we have 2 years ago, we had a big storm in Texas.
Right.
That
the winter storm.
The winter storm.
Right.
Every house was damaged. A lot of houses were damaged.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So they weren't prepared to pay all those claims. So their bucket to pay our claims went pretty low.
The reserves were now low, right?
So now they had to get their reserves back up.
So it's not individual.
It's not individual.
So if they're what you're saying is if they're flush with cash, then you're good. But if you got a major catastrophic event, then what you're saying is that get ready. We're all paying for it.
We're all paying for it.
Even if you didn't have a claim.
Correct.
We're all in this together.
Yes.
Socialism in a capitalistic industry.
Right.
Fantastic. There you go. Make sure you include that in your job. Okay. Fantastic.
I love it. This is perfect. This
Vanguard
is
Agency.
The Vanguard Agency.
Yes.
Follow them. Give them your phone number one more time.
281-453-8770.
You have social media, any Instagram, websites?
Yeah, I have social Instagram.
What's the website?
What's your Instagram?
The website is Vanguard Agency LLC.
Vanguard Agency,
and
okay.
the Instagram is Vanguard Agency. You can just find it on.
Yeah. And not only that, but I'm going to be putting all of their information and all of the descriptions in the podcast episode coming up soon.
Right.
Thank you so much. It was
Thank you.
really,
Thank you.
really amazing
Right.
conversation
Fantastic.
to have today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You guys, I want to introduce to you my skincare expert, Natalia, Castille. Everyone wants to know, how in the world do I have the most gorgeous, beautiful skin? Yeah, thank you very much. I know. And it is because of her. Natalia Castille is my go-to skincare specialist. She takes care of me. And I'm telling you, you guys will love her. You will find her at the ACPS. It is the Aesthetic Center for Plastic Surgery. And if you really, really want to know more about them, you can visit them at their website, ACPS Plastic Surgery. It is a med spa that I love to go to. It's so easy just calling in and say, I need to set up an appointment for my facial with Natalia. And they take care of me immediately, in and out. They take care of skin rejuvenation. They do something called derma infusion. They do cool sculpting, and Natalia does all of that. She's also taking care of my laser needs. Like, she does laser reduction for me, and I swear to you, people say, oh, it's painful. She makes it so painless. Love, love, love her. So if you need to find out more about how you can get great skin, follow her at her Instagram, Natalia Castille, at Natalia Castille. You will not regret it. I will give you guys all the details, and she will take care of you. I promise you, she will do a great job for your skin. You will not regret it, and you will have the best skin of 2022.